Hello ladies and gentlemen, this is James from the cockpit of the 777, and what I want to show you today is how to set up, configure the cockpit of the aircraft for touch and goes. And why would you want to configure the aircraft for touch and goes? That's simple, and the answer is because the touch and go practice, touch and go maneuvers is something you want to have set up so that you can just fire up the aircraft and go and fly. Because doing traffic patterns on an aircraft like the 777, well, actually any traffic pattern, is something that lasts 3 minutes, 5 minutes, let me say 6 minutes or so. So you don't want to have to spend 15 minutes or 10 minutes each time you want to fly for 5 minutes. So setting up your aircraft for touch and goes on your favorite airport with everything completely set up, the only thing you'll have to change, and you will have to change it if you're using real weather, is the QNH setting, the altimeter setting, but everything else is set up, so you just load the panel and fly off and practice touch and goes. So that's pretty nice. What do you need to prepare this? The first thing is, as I said before, you want to choose an airport on which you want to practice, and practice this every time. And why do you want to choose a specific airport? So that you are familiar with the surrounding terrain around the airport, but also with the procedures around the airport, and with the radio navigations, ILS, VORs, etc. So if you choose a specific airport and practice on that airport every time, that will save you time of I mean, if you change airport every time, you have to learn the new airport, the new radio navigations, and that's just a loss of time. The only thing you want to do is flying, practice your flying skills, not your procedural skills. So this is what you want to achieve with this kind of setup. So once you've chosen an airport, in this case this is Ibiza airport in Spain, one of the islands of the Balearic Island, and this is runway 24 at Ibiza. And I chose this airport because it has a nice runway, and because I love islands. I don't know why, but I simply like to fly in or out of islands, and I love airports that are near the sea and at sea level, so that you have nice references. You have ground, but you also have sea, and it's very easy to have your references and know where you are at every moment. Whereas if you don't have much photo scenery or real scenery or add-on scenery, as I don't, if you find yourself flying on an airport in the middle of the inside land, a large section of land, you might get lost because FSX is not very good, at least the vanilla version of FSX, and yeah, that's pretty it. So I like Ibiza. You go ahead and choose the airport you love and you like, and that's it. So what I want to show you, or the way I'm going to do this, is going through the flows as if I was going to do a actual flight. But since I'm not going to do an actual flight, some things will be different. I will point them out. So when you get into the aircraft, the first thing you want to check is the parking brake set. So the way you set the parking brake on the real aircraft is you press the rudder pedals, the actual brakes, to their maximum position, then pull the parking brake there. So the parking brake retains the position that you leave your rudder pedals at. So, and now if I push my rudder pedals, the brakes on top of them, to the top, and release the parking brake. So that you might know, might not know. I think it's something useful to say. So push the brakes to the top and pull the parking brake. So that way we are secured. And if we were on the gate, the parking brake would be set or not, but you'd have chokes on the wheels. Now we are on the runway, so there are no chokes. Next thing is lights. So the first light you want to turn on is the navigation light or position light, and since the engines are running, the beacon light as well. So this is something that could pose some disagreements, but what I like to do it, the way I like to do it, is basically lighting everything up. So landing lights up, on, the runway turn-off lights on, taxi lights on, the strobe is necessary, logo and wing, I like everything on. So it's not mandatory to turn everything on. At least the bare minimum is the beacon light, the red beacon light, navigation lights, landing lights and strobe lights. So logo, wing, runway turn-off and taxi, those are optional, but I like to have my aircraft flying like a Christmas tree, and I like everything lit up. So that's just me. Next thing, you want to the overhead panel of the 777 follows the no green light philosophy. So there is no green lights. If you do a light test like this, see yellow lights, amber lights. So if there's no lights, then you're okay. And the 777 is very simple. The overhead is very simple, very straightforward. If you check the overhead of the 747-400, it looks more cluttered. In the 767, 757, that's another story. And the overhead of the 737, that's also kind of messy. But this is very nice, very simple, and fairly automated. Everything is managed on itself. Almost everything has an auto position. See, the packs have auto positions. The APU bleeds, engine bleeds. Everything is handled automatically. So I'm gonna turn on the seatbelt sign as well, and I don't need wing or engine anti-ice here in hot Spain. Don't need that. So going back down again. Next thing you do is you start programming the holy FMC. It's always the FMC with this aircraft. So the FMC is the heart and soul of a commercial aircraft, like a modern commercial aircraft like the 777. And the way I do it is I go to, well, first of all, let's talk about fuel. So this is the default state your 777 loads at when you fire it up. And you see FSX has the annoying tendency, to me it's annoying, the annoying tendency of always filling up your tanks to 100%. On the 777 that's a problem, because that could mean you are over your maximum landing weight, and since we're doing touch and goes, you want to keep your weight below your maximum landing weight. And where exactly do you want to have it? That's up to you, really. I don't like to be excessively light, too light, because that means the aircraft is going to rocket to the sky, and it's going to be very difficult to level it off once I take off. It's certainly going to be more maneuverable, but I like being a little bit heavier, because in real life, so when you're, let's say, when you're in the line flying the real thing for passengers, you're never going to be that heavy. So take a figure that's something more realistic, something you could be flying in real life with, say a medium haul flight, but not too heavy that you are above your maximum landing weight. So what I'm going to set is FS actions, fuel, and I like to set 30%. 30%. That's 40 tons of fuel, and that's for a short flight, let's say maybe 3 hours, 4 hours flight, something like that. No, 4, let's see, some 5 hours, 6 hours, something like that. So this is maybe this is fuel for doing New York to San Francisco. I don't know. Well, in any case, that's the amount of fuel I like to have on board for touch and goes. Not too much, not too little. So then you go to the FMC, the identification page, check your nav data is current. You don't need nav data for doing touch and goes, but just check it's current for the sake of it. Reference airport, since the IRS is already set up, you don't actually need to input your airport here, you don't need to do it, but for like the Boeing manuals they say procedural consistency. So for the sake of procedural consistency, I'm going to input the airport Ibiza, Lima Echo India Bravo right there. So route Lima Echo India Bravo. We are doing touch and goes. We're not going to input our route, but I just want to have it here to have a runway depiction on the navigation display to help for situational awareness. So origin Ibiza, destination Ibiza. Now I go to departures and arrivals. Ibiza departures, and I just click on the runway 24. That's it. Index, arrivals, and runway 24. That's it. That's everything I want. And you see on the navigation display I have my runway already, right? So that's that. And now you go to route, activate it, and execute. Performance initialization page. So the aircraft has calculated the fuel we have on board, 43 tons. I like tons. If you're American or crazy, you can use pounds, and if you are not crazy, you use kilograms. So just kidding, by the way. So zero fuel weight. You hit that. Actually, in the real aircraft you cannot do this. This is a shortcut of flight simulation, but in real life the captain gets this figure, or the crew, not the captain, but the crew, they get this figure. And in simulation, otherwise you'd have to calculate it yourself, and that's not the job of the pilot, so that's not too bad. You line select key on 3 left, you get this figure, and line select key it again, and there you have it. So as for reserve fuel, this figure doesn't really matter, just fill it because he asked for it, I don't know, 10 tons or 5, who cares. You're not going to fly and touch and goes for 5 hours, that's for sure. Reserve 5. Cruise altitude 1500 feet. That's the traffic pattern altitude or height, but since we are on sea level, altitude and heights are the same here. 1500 feet. For large aircraft like 777, 737, 747, the traffic pattern is 500 feet above the pattern of general aviation aircraft. Cost index, who cares? I don't know, yes, 50 for procedural consistency. That's all fine there. And takeoff thrust. I want takeoff 2, minus 20%, because we are light, actually not extremely light, but light. So I want to have less power, to have a longer takeoff run, and to not overshoot my initial altitude of 1500 feet. I don't want to climb too fast, so I'm going to set takeoff -2 and climb 2. Right? There are certain limitations to when you can use derated takeoffs or assumed temperatures, or both. And if you refer to the manual, they list all of the situations in which you wouldn't use reduced thrust, and that's mainly, it refers to the weather, to the aircraft condition, to the weather condition, if the runway is wet or if it snows or anything like that, low visibility, anything, I don't know. There's a whole bunch of stuff which excludes you from using thrust reduction, but since we are all on sunny and hot Spain, we can afford it. We can allow ourselves a 20% thrust reduction. So that means you look on your ICAS, it went down from, let's see what it said, 101 without takeoff thrust reduction to 91.3% on 1 using the minus 20% derate. So now you go to takeoff page, you set your flaps. I like flaps 5 being light, and the same as the zero fuel weight, on the center of gravity you can line select here, and you get your figure and you input it back again, and there it is. There you have your center of gravity. Have you noticed the green bar appearing on the trim indicator right there? and that's because the aircraft is this green bar is computed using the value inputted into the center of gravity, because the admissible value of the stabilizer trim for takeoff depends on the position of the center of gravity of the aircraft. And this 33% is referring to the mean aerodynamic chord, MAC. And the MAC is an interesting topic on its own, so if you don't know what it is or want to know more about it, go check on holy Wikipedia. There you're going to learn about it. So 146, the V1s, just line select them, and you get those on the, there you see V1 on the speed tape of the primary flight display. So that's that. And the gross takeoff weight, let's put 238, and we will burn out 300 kilograms while we are waiting here. So now what you can do, and this depends, I leave this blank, I won't touch this because it depends on your particular flight, particular day you're going to do the touch and go. So this depends on the weather, the wind, runway conditions, slope, etc. Reference temperature, I won't touch this. Maybe you want to touch it, but you have to touch it every flight every time you fire it up. So I would just leave it blank and not have it saved into the panel state, into the general panel state. Okay. So as you saw, when I changed my takeoff weight, it automatically deleted all the takeoff speeds. And that's because the FMC is conservative, and anytime there is a change on the weights or on the data he uses for computing takeoff performance, anytime you change anything like that, for example, if now I input here a wind direction, he will delete the V speeds as well. So anytime there is a change, the computer will delete the speed, so that the pilots know they have to review it, because maybe there's been a change on the takeoff speeds. And in this case there hasn't been a change, so we just input them again, like that, 155. So the FMC is set. Later on we're going to set up the radios here on NAVRAD, but for now that's okay. Now I want to see what QNH we'll be using, and as you see, I'm using the VHF receiver to 122.0. That's temperature correction. That's the 80s frequency, which is provided by Active Sky Next, which I'm using right now. Active Sky Next will also once the Service Pack 1 is released, Active Sky Next and the 777 will have a weather radar, and that will be pretty cool, I think. So I've purchased Active Sky Next, and if you input 122 in the VHF 1 radio, you have a sort of ATIS. That's here.
Lima Echo India Bravo Airport Information Bravo 1200 Zulu weather wind 220 at 13 visibility 10 sky condition few clouds at 1200 1500 scattered temperature 20 dew point 1 Lima Echo India Bravo Airport Information Bravo 1200 Zulu weather wind.
So as you said, the QNH is 1005 hectopascals. If you're crazy, you'd be using inches of mercury, but we're in Europe and we use hectopascals. 1005, there it is. And the wind is 210 at 13. So that's nice, because we are on runway 24, and that aligns nicely. We'll have a slight crosswind, but that's not too bad. So now the next thing I want to do is I want to set up my navigation display for the takeoff and touch and go and traffic pattern around the airport. So there it is. What I do is I use the lowest scale, so that I see the runway nice and big here, lowest scale, and I use the center mode. This is pretty much the only time I use center mode on the navigation display. Normally during the normal flights I don't use it, but during touch and goes I like to have it on center mode to have a situational awareness of where the runway is and where I am regarding the runway. So I put that on center mode, traffic. I turn both VOR receivers on, and on barometric, on the minimums, I set up the minimums of the ILS approach to the runway 24. Now we are doing visual touch and goes, so we are under VMC and we won't need to fly an ILS, but just in case I want to fly an ILS approach and the weather gets suddenly horribly bad, I just like to have the minimum for the ILS approach right there. But as I said, I'm not going to need it because we are under VMC conditions, visual conditions. So, but anyway, I like to have it, which is for this airport is and runway 24 at 333 feet. Some people complaining about the knob not working with your mouse scroll, and that's realistic behavior. On real life, this is not a roll knob; it's just a push knob. I mean, it has two D10s. One goes up slower, and the in units of 1, and the other in units of 10. So that's realistic. Guys at PMDG know what they were doing, so that's okay. On the navigation display, I also want to have terrain information for situational awareness, and that's it. So what else do I want to have on the navigation display? I also want to have something that is very useful. I go to the fixed page on the FMC, I put Lima Echo India Bravo, the airport. There you see the green circle has showed up right there, and I draw a 3 nautical mile circle around the airport. There it is. So this will allow us to fly touch and goes on a 3 nautical, and staying within this 3 nautical mile circle around the airport, and you'll be able to fill in as many touch and goes as possible in the least amount of time. So in real life, 1 hour flying this aircraft for 1 hour, I don't know how much it could be, $10,000 maybe for 1 hour, but it's a lot of money. You're spending a lot of money, and you want to get the best bang for your buck, so to speak. So you don't want to fly off and do a very long downwind and have a touch and go, a traffic pattern that lasts for 10 or 15 minutes. You want to do it fairly quickly. That's what I said before. So you want to take off, level off at 1500, turn back to the downwind, and back right onto the runway. So what we're going to do is flying. Essentially, we're going to fly it like a sports car, very, very sportly, very sharp turns, and always keeping the airport in sight. And actually, what we're going to do is fly this aircraft like a little Cessna, like a Cessna 172, and that's kind of amazing, I think. So you do that on real life with aircraft as well. Doing this on a 777 must be a fantastic experience for the pilots, I think. So the 3 nautical mile ring is there. And now we go over to the MCP. So I won't be using flight directors. That's personal preference, my preference. I don't like it when I'm doing these kind of approaches, and I want to disarm the auto throttle as well. So this is not something I would do in real life. So if I was flying the real aircraft, I wouldn't do it. But here in the simulator, I do it because my hardware throttle is not synced up with the aircraft throttle, and that means in real life, even when you have your auto throttle armed and engaged, the pilot can always override them. The pilot can always pull on the throttle, on the thrust levers back and forth, and override whatever the auto throttle is doing. But I cannot do that on my hardware set. I know there is an option on the FMC, on the PMDG options. There is an option to have it to always override. I don't like to have it like that because when I'm doing long flights, maybe accidentally I hit on the hardware and I move it and I screw it all. So I like the auto throttle not to be able to be overridden by my hardware throttle, except for when it is on hold mode, the hold phase of takeoff. or on idle hold during an idle descent. But anyway, I disarm those so that the auto throttle doesn't interfere with me, because sometimes there is a low speed protection and a high speed protection, and the low speed protection kicks in when you hit the yellow range on the primary flight display speed tape. So you get something, if you get into there's no indication right here, but if you get into the yellow zone of the speed tape, the auto throttle will kick in and speed the engines up. And I wanted to do it. I wanted to fly the aircraft myself, so I'm not saying I want to fly into the yellow zone. I don't want to do that, but in any case, I want to be able to command my aircraft, my throttles all the time myself. I also have my hardware mapped with a auto throttle disconnect button. I'm going to show you right there. I have the auto throttle disconnect button mapped to my joystick, and I have a takeoff go around button mapped as well. I'm not going to use that because I'm hand flying all the way today. So I'm turning the center pumps off. So I did reduce the fuel and didn't turn the center pumps off. That's all good. And going back to the MCP. So the speed window. What do I want to set on the speed window? On the speed window, there are two options. Normally, in a normal flight, you always set up the V2 speed, V2, and you also would do that in real life during touch and goes. So in real life, you always either on a normal flight or on a touch and go base training flight, you always have V2 here. So that's because having V2 on the MCP allows you to have a reference in case you have an engine failure. In case you have an engine failure during takeoff, you are going to aim or pitch for V2 and climb the aircraft keeping V2, your V2 speed. And that's what you want to always have on the MCP. But since I'm flying on the PC myself and I'm alone here, and I only have two hands, one for the throttles, the other for the joystick, I don't have a third hand for my mouse to keep scrolling on this. What I like to do when doing touch and goes is not setting up my V2 speed here, which, by the way, your V2 is also indicated on the speed tape. I like to set up my approach speed right away. You could do that during the downwind phase. During a downwind, you could do that, but during downwind, I like to look around look outside the aircraft and not spend 30 seconds or who knows 20 seconds changing the speed on the MCP. So I'm going to set the first officer's FMC to show the approach page. Input the approach speed, flaps 30, 142 plus 5, the correction was 5, and input that into the speed window, 142, 147. So as I said, normally you wouldn't set 142, you wouldn't set VREF 30 or your approach speed, you'd set your takeoff speed, which is V2, and that's here, 155. But as I said, I have the touch and goes is going to be a very short and very, let's say, I'm going to be with a very high workload, and I don't want to be having to confront another knob while I'm trying to fly the aircraft. So that's the reason. And the same goes for the heading selector on the MCP. I'm going to go ahead and set it to the downwind heading, which is 062. I'm going to set it already to downwind. In real life, there is a pilot flying and the pilot not flying, and the pilot not flying or pilot monitoring would be the one who'd be changing the MCP setting of speed. He'll set the approach speed here, he'll set the downwind speed heading, the base heading, any heading it's here. But here I'm going to rationalize my workload, and that's why I put the downwind heading here. So that I don't forget when I have to stop and level the aircraft out of the turn after taking off. And on the MCP altitude window, I set 1500, which is the altitude of the traffic pattern on a 777. 1500, there it is. And flight directors off. That's it. Right? So I might do the same on the first officer's position, center, and terrain. Actually, I'm not gonna use terrain because I think maybe it consumes a little bit more of frames. I don't know. And I'm going to fly from the captain's side anyway. Set the altimeter setting 1005, so that's okay. Auto brake RTO, rigid takeoff, and the minimums on the FO side as well, 333. Let's see if this wants to move. There it is. 333. There it is. So going down on the pedestal, we check everything is in order. Of course, the engines are running, spoils are down. The trim, have we set the trim for takeoff? Takeoff trim is 2.75, and let me adjust the trim. You should definitely have a trim up or down on your hardware joystick. So more or less that's it, and you don't have to be obsessive compulsive about having this value 2.75 exactly into the stabilizer trim indicator, and that's because this 2.75 given by the FMC has some error in it. It has error to it because you never know where your passengers are located. The cargo, well, cargo is more something which you can define more precisely, but if you are flying with people and you put people inside, first of all you use standards for male weights, for female weights, maybe also for children weights. So well, the bottom line, I want to keep this short. The bottom line is this 2.75 has some error in it. More precisely, this 33% center of gravity has error to it. It's approximate and it's good enough, but it has errors. So you don't need to input 2.75 because 2.8 or your actual, if you were able to determine exactly to 100% fidelity where your center of gravity is, maybe your real trim wouldn't be 2.75 but 2.7 or 2.8 or I don't know, 2.85. I don't know how big the margin is, but there is error. So when you look down here, you only something approximate is enough, and 2.75 is more or less there. Of course, you could go to the flight controls page here and set it up there. You see 2.85. Well, I can look it up there, but that we don't care. Actually, we are looking for someone. Even if we did, the first thing you want to do is be within the green band. Be within the green band. Anything within the green band, the aircraft would fly. So if you want to, with more or less pull or back on pulling on the while rotating, but it would work. So the aircraft would be flyable, and anything close to that 2.75 is okay. So 2.5, 3, who cares? Okay, so don't be too maniac about getting too close to that figure. Going through all the pages, checking everything's okay, fuel is okay, pneumatics, doors, everything's closed, gear, flight controls. Now you check your flight controls. Full left, neutral, full right, neutral, elevator full up, neutral, full down, neutral, and the rudder full left, neutral, full right, neutral. So good to go. Flight controls are working, which is nice. Maintenance did the job properly. So checklists. aviation checklists. We love, don't we? Pre-flight. So, since I don't have my truck IR, I cannot point on the. I'm not using it on this video. I cannot point. Let's, for the sake of it, have it checked. Flight instruments are checked. Altimeters, fuel control switch as well. This was the pre-flight check. Normal before start. MCP is all set. V2. Normally this is V2, but today it's V approach, not V2. Heading is the downwind heading, and altitude is 1500 feet. As said, takeoff speeds are computed and visible on the speed tape. The CDU pre-flight is completed. The trim is set. 2.7500. Taxi and takeoff briefings. And beacon is on. And the B for taxi, anti-air is not needed. Recall. Let's recall. Oops, wrong button. Recall. Recall checked. Auto brake. Flight controls are checked. Ground equipment is clear. And the P for takeoff checklist. Flaps 5. So let's set up flaps 5. That's it. Flaps 5. So now you want to go back to the FMC navigation radio, and here this is specific for the airport you choose to fly. Here you set up the navigation aids you want to use. I'm going to use the ILS runway 24. So even though I'm going to fly visually under VMC conditions, in real life you have the ILS as a backup. If there is an ILS, you have it as a backup. Why not? There is a certain flight simism out there. There are people who believe that if you're flying visual, you cannot use an ILS, and that's plain wrong. If you have something that can help you, you use it. Even if you're flying VFR, even VFR pilots, private pilots, they might use VORs. And even if they don't have an instrument rating, it's not forbidden for them to tune a VOR and cross-check where they are. Of course, that doesn't mean they can fly. They always have to be under VMC and clear of clouds and so on. But if they want, they can, and they have a VOR receiver, they can use it for precision reference. So the same goes here. I can tune the ILS frequency I want and have it for reference during the final approach. Of course, that's invalid because I was talking and not focusing on what was I doing. 109, and there you see the localizer, runway, and the glide slope on the PFD. And the FMC has automatically tuned the India Bravo Alpha VOR, which is nice. That's the VOR on Ibiza Airport. And this is a feature I like about this FMC. It allows you to pre-select navigation aid. So I can go ahead and put India Bravo Alpha here, and if for some reason the FMC made the decision to change these VORs to other VORs, and I wanted to tune back to them, I could line select here, bring it down to the scratch pad and put it right back there, or I could go ahead and set it in manually, see, which is also okay. That way he won't change that because it's manually set. If I wanted it to go back to auto managed, I click delete and it goes back to automatic. India Bravo Alpha, and now I can input a course, but I'm not gonna do that because I'm not flying the VOR approach. So, takeoff reference is here. On the captain's side, I have the takeoff reference page. On the first officer side, the approach reference page. Auto brake is set to RTO. Everything is set for takeoff. The before takeoff checklist is completed. And now I leave it on the after takeoff checklist. I don't know why this is checked, but I'm going to uncheck it and leave it like that. So now everything is set up for going. Of course, this video has taken me, I don't know how much, but a long time. Normally You do this very fast, in 15 or so minutes. You have it set up, you save it, you save this panel state, and the next time you want to fly touch and goes on this airport, you only have to load this panel state, change the QNH if it applies, if you're using real weather, change your QNH setting, and fly off. So now I'm going to save all of what I've done. I'm quickly going to move around the cockpit just in case I've forgotten something. Want to check I didn't forget anything. So seatbelts on, everything is set over here, window heat is on, fuel configuration is. This aircraft is very easy in the sense that it knows, it's very clever, it knows how it has to be configured. If the fuel pumps are not properly configured, it will tell you on the ICAS, you'll get a warning. So it's a smart plane, not like a smartphone, a smart plane. I call them dumb phones, not smartphones. They make people dumb, not smart. Flaps, everything is set. Well, you could have traffic here, but since I'm only going to fly like this offline, I'm not flying touch and goes online. I'm going to in real life you use the TCAS, so why not do it here as well. I don't know what this was. Anyway, 20 standard IFR, and the frequency, Unicom frequency 122.8, right there, and the 80s frequency if you're using Active Sky Next 122. So that's everything there is to it. I hope I'm not forgetting anything. I think I'm not. Now you go to the, I use the center FMC for this kind of stuff. Menu, FS actions, no, PMDG setup, panel state, save. And here I go ahead and click TG for touch and goes. No, it's TG touch and goes, and the airport I'm at, Lima Echo India Bravo. There. I'm not going to execute because I've saved it already. I have one named exactly like that already. But you execute, and next time you load your aircraft, you wait the 15 seconds till it initializes, then you fire up the FMC, go to PMDG setup, panel state load, and select Tango Golf Lima Echo India Bravo. So I'm going to do that just to show you. Execute, loading panel state. Now the aircraft is initializing. For the time it takes to initialize the aircraft, don't touch anything. Leave it leave it alone, don't touch it. And as you can see, everything is exactly as I left it. These speeds are different because I was using different weights, but everything is exactly the same. So that's how I set up the aircraft for doing touch and goes. On the next video I'm going to actually fly the touch and goes and show you. So hope you enjoyed it, and good night. Bye bye.